I knew some other monsters that would like to challenge that title.
Oh yeah? And what makes them worthy? Only a Rathalos can be king.
Oh, sure, I agree, but there are 12 others that fit the bill.
Excuse me?
Yeah, there's a lot of you.
You mean I have a family?
Sort of. They've all been hunted.
Ladies, gentlemen, and monsters of all ages,
Everyone knows the poster child for Monster Hunter as a series is Rathalos. He of course was a flagship monster early on in the series, but is pretty much inarguable that if you were to choose one monster to be the flagship of the entire series, it would be him. And as such, he's appeared in every Monster Hunter game that you can think of. But of course, not just him himself, various versions of Rathalos as well, because the Monster Hunter series is great at coming up with alternate monster categories. Things like subspecies, variants, rare species, so on and so forth, and with Rathalos being considered such an impactful creature, unsurprisingly, it has an entry in almost every single one of those categories, with there technically being 13 different kinds of Rathalos, though one of those is from the Monster Hunter movie where they called it a greater Rathalos just to get away with it being, well, bigger. No other difference, just big Rathalos. So I may not be ranking that one today because of, well, it just being a big Rathalos, but today is all about ranking the Rathalos, both to make a point that maybe there are too many Rathalos, but also to talk about the differences between them and why some of them stand clearly above the rest. Without further ado then, it's time for the Rathalos tier list, pitting Rathalos against Rathalos, Rathalos against Rathalos, and of course, there will also be Rathalos. First up today, starting off in the D tier, we have Azure Ratlos. I just don't like him personally. He caused me a lot of pain in the first few times that I fought him, just flying around right out of the reach of my tiny melee weapons and spitting out triple fireball combos on repeat, and I'll admit it, one of my earliest memories of my journey in Monster Hunter as a whole was trying to solo an Azure Ratlos arena quest and fainting 9 times due to just never landing onto the ground and me getting impatient. Yes, this was my fault, but I don't care. D tier for you. Next up on the C tier, we have Apex Rathalos from Monster Hunter Rise. This one isn't particularly bad in a vacuum. He looks cool, he has neat attacks, but if you've played Monster Hunter Generations, then you know that this Rathalos is simply an imitation of a cooler Rathalos that had already existed. He is a discount Dreadking, and that definitely lowers him pretty hard in my opinion.
A little bargain bin flamethrower.
Then we move up to the B tier, and we have Ratha, the Rathlos that is your companion in the original Monster Hunter Stories game. This Rathalos is a good Rathalos, but for the most part it's just a Rathalos. It is technically very slightly different than a base Rathalos, as it has the kinship attack, but it's not really any majorly notable ways other than that and, you know, friendship. So B tier just feels right. After that we move up to the A tier to reach Silver Rathalos. This monster has gone through a bunch of iterations over the years, changing pretty significantly with every one. Back in the day, he was an aerial nightmare that would rarely leave the sky without being forced to, raining fireballs from above like a madman. In Iceborne, they changed him to be more about just massive fireballs in general. They added a whole Hellfire mode mechanic to him, and then in Sunbreak, they changed him up even more, giving him some extra cool fire moves and the ability to fit out hot rocks that could be ignited at a later point in time to explode after the fact. Good Rathalos, hot fire, not a massive amount more that you could ask for, really. Following him, we get to Dreadking Rathlos. This one here is a solid Rathlos. I love his visuals in general. The much deeper red coloring and the more vibrant wings just make him pop in a way that regular Rathlos doesn't quite do. And then when it comes to the fight itself, its fireballs function in a totally unique way, with the ability to stick on the ground for a bit before exploding in a large area around it. It does these quite a bit and has different variations on the concept too, but all in all, to me, this is just a great example of taking Rathlos and making it a little bit cooler, a little bit edgier, and a little bit more dangerous. Nothing crazy unique, but just Rathalos squared, sort of. After that, we start to move into deeper spin-off territory with Flame Rathalos from Monster Hunter Explorer. This Rathalos was just constantly covered in fire, which is sort of terrifying. Its coloring was changed to a more orange and gold type of mixture, not that it is particularly obvious, because honestly, it just looks like it's constantly on fire. It's hard to work out what's underneath it. As far as actual fight changes, it could apply Fireblade on all of its physical attacks because, you know, it's on fire all the time, and it also lost the ability to apply poison with its talons, instead replaced with even more fire. It's called Flame Rathlos for a reason, not just the way that it looks, but the way that it fights. Also, a neat little touch on top of that is that you can't really use shields to guard its fire breath, they just go right on through it. Then rounding off the A tier, we have Destruction Wyvern Rathalos. This one is not only from a spin-off game, being Monster Hunter Explorer once again, but it is also a collaboration with Fairy Tail, so multiple levels of separation from regular Rathlos. It is listed as being able to use the Earth element, it can do some crazy beam attacks, and just in general, this thing looks nuts. It is all in an attempt to imitate a monster from another form of media though, so it does make it a little bit of an oddity when it comes to the series as a whole. However, it is undeniably a Rathlos, and undeniably a unique kind of Rathlos from all of the others that we are talking about today. Starting off the S tier then, we have Rathalos, regular Rathalos, the Rathalos. In all ways of looking at it, he is the perfect example of what Monster Hunter set out to do in the first place. Create a creature hunting game with unique looking monsters. Yes, he is a relatively basic dragon looking, but even in that sense, he has his uniqueness that makes him what he is. There aren't really any other fictional dragons that looked quite the same beforehand, which is a lot given how many dragons have been created just over the years in fictional media. And as far as the fight goes, it has evolved multiple times as well, to the point where in Sunbreak he may just be the most difficult he has ever been, at least if you don't count the controls as part of the difficulty from Monster Hunter 1. Why is he on the S tier then when he is just a basic Rathalos? Well, the answer is quite simple. This is a tier list comparing all the Rathalos, and no Rathalos is more Rathalos than Rathalos himself. Next up we have Zerureusu, a burst species of Rathalos from Monster Hunter Frontier. Visually, I adore this one, with a pile of crystals replacing the classic wing spikes, a brand new wing pattern that makes it look almost technological in nature, a bright white general scale coloring, and an ominous blue glow all over its body. As for the fight itself, this one is just absolutely nuts. It fires off beams of light, it calls down beams of light from above, it has beams that can be used in various situations from its mouth. It is just an absolutely terrifying creature. If this were a Rathlos difficulty tier list, it would still be in the top tier, simply with much less company. The main one that I know for sure would be joining it though is the other one from Frontier, Zenith Rathalos, who was just Rathlos to the extreme. Covered in absolutely massive wing spikes, and on that note, their wings in general are just massive as a whole. As for the combat, the most important thing to mention here is the addition of Extreme Fire Blight, a blight unique to Frontier. This worked like regular Fire Blight in a way, slowly reducing your health while you were effective, but of course came with an extra nasty, massive side effect. Every tick wouldn't just lower your current health, but your maximum health too. So essentially, if you are caught on fire and wait even a couple of seconds before shaking it off, your max health is suddenly lower.
I am scared.
This adds up over and over until your maximum health is tiny and you have no choice but to get one shot by the monster. It is a super nasty effect, but it also makes for a particularly more interesting fight as Fireblight becomes a genuine threat rather than just a general annoyance, and your max potions become an incredibly important resource to manage as well, deciding when you need to refix your max health. As well, this monster has multiple unique attacks and ways of putting Fireblight on you. It creates fiery tornadoes on occasion, it can make pillars of flame erupt from the ground because why not, and sometimes it will even cover itself in fire and use its overgrown wings to shoot the fire towards you like a projectile, all from the safety of the sky. This one is truly terrifying and one hell of a great Rathlos, but still not the most fearsome of them all because the title probably lies with Sparkling Zerureusu, the final monster added to Frontier. This is an extreme species of a burst species of Rathlos. It looks insane. The blue glow is replaced with a reddish pink glow. The crystals are ridiculously overgrown. The moveset is just ridiculous. This thing was built to destroy hunters, AoE everywhere. It has no care for who you are or what you do, it just wants to murder you. Say what you will, but this Rathalos is totally Rathalos, and it sort of underlines what I'm trying to point out here with this entire video, really. A variation of a variation of a variation. This is just so separated from base Rathalos in every way that it's crazy, and yet it still exists as a Rathalos. I'm not saying that the monster is bad by any means, after all, I put it on the S tier for a reason. It's just Zerureusu, but cooler. But look at this monster, look at its moveset, and just try to tell me this had to be a Rathalos to get the job done. Then finally today we have Raisewing Rathalos from Monster Hunter Stories 2. This one is really cool from top to bottom. Originally this is just a Rathalos that can't fly, its wings basically sealed together in a way that makes them unable to unfurl, and that is awesome from the very beginning as a way to differentiate the creature. Then over time it eventually becomes able to fly, its wings being released, but everyone is terrified, as the legend as they know it is that one beat of this creature's wings could destroy the entire world. And, well, they aren't totally wrong, because this Rathalos has a ridiculous power that is unlocked when it sort of goes haywire. When it is shown enough love and friendship, it is able to rein it in and keep it from getting out of hand, but if anything happens to throw it off and make it upset, it can unleash absolutely ridiculous explosions from a single fireball style, capable of wiping out large chunks of land without a second thought. I've always thought that this would be a really interesting way to cross over between stories and the main series itself, giving us the ability to hunt a raging Razewing Rathalos. Obviously, it wouldn't quite fit the lore of Stories 2, as this is the only one, and we made friends with it and kept it in line, but it would surely make for a simultaneously incredible and difficult fight in the main series style of combat, in my opinion. And that is it, everyone. My personal tier list of the Rathalos there's so many of them. There are lots of Rathalos, and most of them are relatively different from each other. There is, of course, a bit of overlap here and there, but that is what happens when you make 12 different versions of a singular monster. I'm not saying any of these don't deserve to exist, but you know, hey, maybe in the future, instead of adding a whole new Rathalos, we could just design a new monster visually that would have that moveset. I'm just saying, maybe 13 Rathalos are enough, you know? If you count every single monster and every spin-off, every variation, everything in Monster Hunter, there are just over 400 large monsters in the Monster Hunter series as a whole, and 13 of them are Rathalos. 3% of all monsters are Rathalos. I'm not saying that is a problem, but if we are going to continue along this path, well, you know, it could be. Anyways, like if you like the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay Rathalos.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.